back on the Zero Hour. I'm your host, Richard RJ Eskow, and for this next segment, as the old horror movies used to say, the call is coming from inside the house. Executive producer Troy Miller is also a political activist in West Virginia and a Democratic Party leader there, and there's some news out of the West Virginia Democratic Party. So first of all, Troy Miller, welcome back to this side of the camera.
Always a pleasure to be here with you. And it's always, if I'm on this side of the camera, we're talking about something exciting, but it's not always something like good or cool. And I think this time we actually have something here that, the viewers and listeners might be interested in that isn't a doomsday sort of canary in the coal mine report from West Virginia. Right.
We're all canaries in the coal mine. So tell us, spring it.
So on Saturday, September 30th, down in Weston, West Virginia, which is down by Jane Lou, for any people who know the geography of West Virginia, and we are talking West Virginia, not the state that has Richmond, but the state that has Charleston. We passed unanimously, the West Virginia Democratic Executive Committee, a resolution affirming the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights that our audience is likely familiar with through Harvey's work, through Marianne Williamson's work. And we passed it. We're now the third state party to have adopted this resolution in some form. Other states have modified it ever so slightly. We changed one word, but the substance of what was the largest of the proposals from the Progressive Democrats of America, Alan Minsky and Harvey Kaye, and these coalitions, we embraced all 10 bullet points. And I'll read those out loud now because I think it's helpful for the audience to know what the hell we're talking about. The resolution, as adopted, affirms the West Virginia Democratic Party's support for the right to a job and a living wage, the right to a voice in the workplace through a union and collective bargaining, the right to comprehensive quality health care, the right to a complete cost-free public education and access to broadband internet, the right to decent, safe, affordable housing, the right to a clean environment and a healthy planet, the right to meaningful resources at birth and a secure retirement, the right to sound banking and financial services, the right to an equitable and economically fair justice system, and the right to vote and otherwise participate in public life. I submitted this resolution, and it was adopted unanimously in a room full of, it was a new guard for people who know about the sort of overhaul that the West Virginia Democratic Party experienced last year. At the time I came into the executive committee, and old guard alike. The former chairwoman is still a representative for one of the counties down there, and there was absolutely no dissent. Beyond that, as I've messaged to you sort of privately, but our chair of the party, Mike Pushkin, he went on Hoppy Kercheval's radio show 2 days ago when the presser went out that the Democratic Party issued. And Hoppy is, I think it's fair to say, even if he were to hear this, I think it's fair to call him an extreme moderate Republican. He's aggressive in his moderation, but he's also the political tastemaker in the state, or one of a few. He's somebody who, when Senator Manchin wants to talk to the people as a whole and address the state, he goes to Hoppy's program much of the time. And I think it's safe to say that he listens to Hoppy to try to figure out which way the political winds are blowing. That's all to set up to say that when Mike joined Hoppy on the program a couple of days ago, I was pleasantly surprised with how receptive he seemed to be to the idea. I'm paraphrasing, but he identified immediately that this seems to be a return to New Deal values. I would say it seems to be a situation. This is a return to New Deal values, a return to classic Democratic values, without the onerousness of the Dixiecrats that the New Deal coalition had to deal with. And
it's straight out of FDR's economic.
Absolutely. Yep.
except for the broadband part, which, he can't be faulted for not anticipating. But, it's essentially, and maybe more climate emphasis than we saw then. But even FDR was very much, perhaps the first president, the New Deal addressed climate, and there were conservation camps in West Virginia, among other states. So, yeah, I would say it's great that someone like Hoppe, that someone like Hoppe could get where this was coming from. And fascinating to me that he was not hostile to it.
No, not hostile in the least. I mean, he read all of them out the way I just did on air, and he ended it by saying essentially that, there's not. I think the Republicans are going to have a hard time attacking these things. He contrasted it with the woke issues of the day, which God knows that just even using that phrase is buying into the right wing rhetoric. And
Right.
I think this is one of the major things. This is, there is no legislation attached to these things right now. This is a visionary document, but affirming these rights is absolutely the first step to securing these rights. And with that, we are reclaiming our own story and message. One of the things that over the last for many years now, it feels like, 2015 is now 8 years ago. That is frightening to me, because it still feels, I guess the trauma from 15 and 16 is still very live with me. But the party has been very much adrift with messaging, and voters have expressed this. I believe when Professor K. Harvey has been on this program before, he's talked about, when you go kind of do an informal polling of people on the street and ask them what do Democrats stand for, they might come off with there's nothing coherent that they're going to say back to you. They're going to start listing off a laundry list of talk radio or Fox News type issues. Oh, Democrats stand for, they're pro-abortion, they're anti-gun, they want illegal people to vote, then they believe that everybody should get our earned benefits even if they haven't paid into them. All this various, all of these sort of a list of interrelated but never presented as such related issues. I think this Economic Bill of Rights absolutely gives us solid ground that every candidate, every activist, every organizer, every volunteer from the very local level for organizing for dog catcher or sanitation department all the way up to, hopefully we'll have we'll see more candidates being able to run for the U.S. Senate in the Democratic Party than just Senator Manchin. That's a whole nother conversation about what he's going to do with this, or what he's going to do in general. Go ahead.
Let me just jump in. A couple things, I wanted to sort of explore. One was, like the great R&B singer Bobby Womack used to say, sometimes you got to lose to win. So here you have the West Virginia Democratic Party dominant for many years, on a losing streak for a while. I think it's fair and not unkind to say about West Virginia Democrats for a variety of reasons. I think your last two statewide elected officials have been Joe Manchin. No wonder he's close to Hoppe, because in many ways he's kind of a moderate Republican himself, even though he's a Democrat. And you have Jim Justice, who was always a Republican, the governor. Cole.
No, he was a Democrat before. He was actually
he was a Republican. He became a Democrat. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. To get elected, and I don't know what he is now. Maybe he's gone back.
He's a Republican now. Yeah.
Yeah. So so he used that really to get on the ballot, I guess. But in a way, that gives you guys a chance, and obviously I'm using guys in a non-gendered sense, to start from scratch. I don't know what the other two states were. Do you offhand know the other two states that adopted it?
There was Arizona adopted it right before us, or shortly before us, and Massachusetts. And Massachusetts adopted it with while taking out the clause on sound banking and financial services, which just goes to show very much, Massachusetts is a place where Democrats are very strong. And I guess in part because of that, there is resistance to classic, what should be universal things, but there's still a strong resistance. And I think it's fair. I think what you're saying is, I think absolutely fair to say. It's not just that Democrats have been on a losing streak. We're in a super minority here. We've had multiple Democrats switch to Republicans and say things like, the Democrats have become too woke or too radical or things like this. And I've said it to people in this party. I'll say it here. I'll say it to anyone who asks. I think that the reality is that we've been so soft on what we stand for. We haven't had a resolution to this effect that says clearly what we stand for. And so people are genuinely confused about whether they're a Democrat or not. And when they're actually pushed on some of these issues, they realize, they're actually just an opportunist, or they'd rather caucus with the Republicans and whatever is going on there. And I don't think I'm out of line to say that I'm glad about the timing that that we are able to adopt this unanimously, because for the next 8 months, we'll be able to recruit candidates and get all of these candidates on the same page fighting for these issues up and down the ballot. And during that time, the Republicans, who are in their supermajority and are all grasping for all various levers of power. We have Jim Justice, who's running for the Senate against Alex Mooney, who isn't, he's he was born in a DC hospital, and that, Ivy League educated guy came over here with the support of the American Legislative Exchange Council and has sort of continued to exist in West Virginia, and beat out one of the longstanding, more moderate Republicans, David McKinley, last time. So that's going to be an interesting Senate race, and they are going to be absolutely brutal. They are both trying to be the Trumpiest person possible. And at the same time, their backers are out for blood for each other between the Koch networks and the Trump networks and all of this. So that's going to be happening at every level down the way as delegates try to move up, as first-time Republicans try to unseat people who aren't radical enough. They didn't ban enough books. They didn't propose enough bans on things that aren't happening in the state. They're going to be just absolutely, and we're going to be talking about these things. We're going to be talking about what West Virginians and all Americans care about and deserve. This is not, it's aspirational, but it's not pie in the sky.
No, and I'll tell you one other thing that I like about it a lot. First of all, anti-woke. I mean, it's like, what's a better word for anti-woke? Unconscious, I guess. But but what I like about this is, and what your comments really underscore is, if a party like the Democrats doesn't define in clear, simple, aggressive terms what it stands for, then the other party can define them. And that's where all this, well, they're the ones that want, drag queens to, babysit your infants or whatever their latest shtick is, and I use those terms deliberately because those are the terms they use, right? So, but this, this gets to why Bernie was doing so well. This is, hey, you know what? We're for getting you a decent job. It can be done. Here's how to do it. We're for cleaning up. You deserve a decent place to live that's not going to wash away in a flood or be, poisoning you in the water and the air. And the other guys can talk around this and that about what church somebody goes to, or, what kind of clothes they wear. But we're serious about, helping you live longer, because life expectancy stinks in, parts of West Virginia, the whole thing, I mean, if you want to perform, how you don't like other people, vote for them. But if you want to live longer, have a better job, vote for us. That, to me, at least that's a start. I know it's a huge uphill climb, but at least that gives West Virginia Democrats something to say other than, no, we're not that woke or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And beyond that, these are universal, right? This is regardless of race, gender, creed, position, or anything else. This is for drag queens, quote unquote, just as much as versus a cis white a heterosexual man. These are unifying values. This is getting back to a long tradition of not allowing the upstart fascists to divide and conquer. And, whether it's in American history been the fascists and the sort of Italian or the Nazis in the sort of German sense, or the very real Southern oligarchy that relied on the same damn thing, not just up through the Civil War, but in past Reconstruction, when they started having to convince poor whites that they were still better than poor blacks, even if poor blacks nominally had all the same rights now by the Constitution. And I will go even further back and say, I don't want to overblow or overstate the import of what the West Virginia Democratic Executive Committee adopting this resolution is. But I do think it is critically important that we understand that the American Revolution did not begin in 1776. The American Revolution began in the minds of the colonists in the decades leading up to it. It began with the thoughts of the Enlightenment. It began with John Locke and others writing that man has a right to property and not just the King of England, and that divine right does not actually put somebody over everyone else or give them an inherent right to rule. These are the bedrock principles that really define the American Revolution and the principles of the first Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Unfortunately, we were still operating on a mindset where we considered African enslaved people brought over here from Africa as part of the property rights we were entitled to, which is a miscarriage of justice to the extreme, and we are still living out through this day. But again, this is partially why FDR put forward the second economic Bill of Rights, because if you do not affirm these rights to begin with, then you cannot work to secure them. There was some conservative on Twitter who kind of just put a laughing emoji and said rights to these things, and you guys enjoy being in the super minority. And if you're watching this video, yes, I did see that comment, but I think you're the one being laughable with that comment, because oh yeah, like I don't have a right to quarter soldiers in my house. These are not. That's not an inherent right that I just have, right? Or a right to bear arms, if that's how you choose to interpret that individual right. These things have to be stated and secured. There is nothing funny about saying that we have a right to affordable and safe and decent housing. This is one of the basic things that human beings need to survive. And at the wealthiest in the wealthiest country, or I'm not sure if China has surpassed us, but let's say in the wealthiest country at the wealthiest time in our history that the world has ever seen, I do not think that it is any of these things: a job, a living wage, voice in a workplace, comprehensive quality healthcare, complete cost-free public education and access to broadband internet, decent, safe, affordable housing, clean environment and a healthy planet, meaningful resources at birth and a secure retirement, sound banking and financial services, an equitable and economically fair justice system. I mean, hell, that one's supposed to be kind of basically in the first Bill of Rights, right?
That also is something that conservatives really resonate with. That the rigged game narrative, across the political spectrum, that resonates. I'll say one thing in defense of West Virginia's honor: you guys did break away from Virginia over the issue of slavery and side with the North. So there's that. But maybe last question. Have you guys talked at all? No doubt you're going to get the response. This is socialism. This is nobody offers you a free lunch. We're individualists. You go out and provide if you want. That whole narrative, rugged individualism for thee, and I keep all the money for me, the capital. Have you guys talked at all about anticipating that?
And my first response of many, right? First of all, would be that FDR understood just as well as you and I can understand that this is a bulwark against socialism. And Otto von Bismarck before that, with public employees insurance in Germany, in the Kaiser's Germany, these are bulwarks against socialism. These are the things that we have to secure unless we want the socialist revolution. Same thing with the fascist revolution. This is what fascists guarantee, but what they say is there's some of us who deserve these rights way more than others. And they talk about the beneficent inequality of how the human race is constructed and all of this pseudo-evolutionary science. This is probably capitalism's best chance. Now, these rights can be secured outside of capitalism, but if you can secure these rights inside of the capitalist system, you might be able to save the system from itself. So that would be my first response. And my second...
I might be against it then. No, but
right? No, I mean, right? Exactly. I think there are definitely some socialists out there who rightfully go, well, what the hell? You know, you're trying
West Virginia, you're not going to win as the Socialist Party of West Virginia.
We have plenty. We have a long socialist labor history in West Virginia. But the other thing I would say is these things. If you can secure these things for an individual, then you have created a more rugged individual who will be able to do more than what we can imagine right now. Right? We can talk all we want about the brilliant minds that dropped out of college and came out of poverty and invented whatever technology. But those are the exceptions. And what I'd like to see is that we can create the rules out of that by making sure that how many people have we lost because they were starving, because they couldn't afford the education, because any number of things. You know, as a short aside, there's this research that one person, or it came out recently about long-term effects of early childhood investment for children who receive SSI benefits because of their low birth weight. And people are going, look, it doesn't have any effect on their long-term impact or long-term outcomes. And I'm going, well, not dying young is as sure as hell a real effect for their long-term outcomes, you know? And
of course, sure.
So this is the type of thing I think that if we can secure these rights, and you know, some of these things we've already started towards. WIC is a form of meaningful resources at birth, right?
And you know, better. Just the education alone, you know, who knows how many diseases could have been cured by some brilliant poor kid in Morgantown or Welch or you know, some other place in West Virginia who
Weston or Jane Lou.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So
there's so much to talk about here, but I know we're out of time as well as you do.
So, all right. Well, best of luck to all of you guys on this, and we will be watching.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks so much for the audience. Spread the word, guys and gals, and everyone else.
Right. Because we are inclusive.
Right.
And that's it. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.